It was kind of the storm of the century, or the 500-year flood or storm, that by some estimates over 15 inches of rain fell over a 3-day period on June 4th, 5th, and 6th, 1982. But at that time, what was very sensitive in this area was located right on the Falls River, the river that ties the three villages of Ivoryton, Centerbrook, and Essex all together, is the Falls River itself. And over time, over several hundred years, there are at least 7 dams powering machinery and factories and mills along the Falls River.
It had been raining for about 48 hours. They say anywhere from 48 to 72 hours the rain had been falling. There was some sort of weather event that just stalled over Connecticut. And so by Saturday evening, afternoon, evening, the first responders realized that there was going to be some serious flooding problems. So they started evacuating people. They thought that the Falls River was going to be overflowing, the dams were going to be overflowing, and that people might get stuck in their houses, their cars might get damaged. They just needed to get out to higher ground.
I wasn't home. I was living by myself at that time, and I was at a friend's house and on the other side of town. And a friend of mine, Danny Zanardi, a good friend of mine, very like a brother to me, called me on the phone there. Back then, no cell phone, so everything's a landline. And started screaming at me, "Do you know what's going on, this and that? And it's raining out." I said, "I know it's raining out. Yeah, I can hear it. What are you doing? Watching TV?" You know, well, they evacuated your road. Up that previous week, it had rained, not hard, as I recall, but there was a lot of steady rain, so the ground was pretty saturated. So when it rained, the ground couldn't absorb the water anymore. So now it's just, whatever's falling, it's just being dispersed and going down the creeks.
The original Bushy Hill Dam was made of earth and masonry, 265 feet long, 29 feet high, with a 10-foot wide spillway and a 12-inch diameter low-level outlet pipe, which is how they actually controlled water to the factory. A 1979 inspection report judged it to be in poor condition and a high hazard because of potential damage a failure would cause.
The clock turns over to Sunday, June 6th. And at about 12:30, so the middle of the night, the Bushy Hill Dam gave way. And the Bushy Hill Dam held a mile-long lake of water that then broke through the dam and flowed down to the next big water hole, which was the Clark Pond, which was held in place by the Clark Pond Dam. And when I say it flowed down, I mean literally it flowed down. The elevation was like about 85 feet. So not only was the power from the water rushing through the dam a problem, but also gravity pulling it into the next big swimming hole. And it crashed through the Clark Pond Dam across West Main Street, and the house right across the street was destroyed. And when I say destroyed, I don't mean, oh look, there's the Walden's roof over there. No, it was obliterated like toothpicks.
Didn't take them long to get, the National Guard was down here, with all their equipment and everything, so they bulldozed the road in there pretty quick. So when the water comes over a dam, you're either going to lose a dam by water going around the dam on the earth. Once it goes over the earth, it's going to start eroding it. Then it erodes the holes on both sides, and then once it gets weak like that, it pushes the whole dam over. The other way is the water coming over the dam and disturbing everything underneath and causing a hole down there, and then everything blows out and you lose your dam. There was a lot of water being lost by the old Pratt Reed factory at the end of Ivoryton there. I thought I read that it took a half an hour for that water, once that dam broke, to come down and hit Clark Pond.
Across the area, every stream, ditch, and swale was out of its banks. Most roads were blocked or soon to be blocked. To give you a scale of the flow, last October we had 6 inches of rain. Ivory Street, where we were just started from, the water was almost a foot deep, 200 yards wide, and flowing dangerously fast.
Because of having these dams in place, we had large bodies of water. We had the Bushy Hill Pond, we had the Clark Pond Dam, we had what we called Ivory Lake, which is now a little creek right alongside Main Street, but at that point was really filled up to the street.
And it was a skating pond that was built by the company for the inhabitants of Ivoryton, The dam for it was right underneath this bridge here, and if you went underneath, you could see it.
Now we're hearing everything about how all the damage is down in Iverton. So we said, well, nobody knows. We're calling in by radio. Nobody knows where we are. Let's take a ride. And it was, again, it was hard getting down there, so there was a lot of back and forth. And I know we were driving down Comstock Ave, because at the foot of Comstock was where there was a ton of damage. And we were going down there slowly, and the road was all undermined, and we did not know. And all of a sudden, the road just gave away with our truck on it. And down, we dropped probably a couple feet or more. And all we're thinking of is, oh my God, boss is not going to be happy with us. Slowly, I was driving just slowly. I put it in four-wheel drive and said a couple prayers and slowly backed out. And that was the end of our excursion. After that, I said, okay, let's just go back.
But at one point, they were estimating that 8 to 9 feet of water, a wall of water, was sweeping through.
We don't have too many images of the flood in place, because obviously everybody was focused on safety at that time. But when the sun rose the next day and you surveyed the damage, it really looked like a war zone.
So that was all in the middle of the night on early morning Sunday, June 6th. And so by the time people woke up, many of whom had no idea what had happened, the water was receded. So there were people coming out of their houses saying, what happened? Why is that car upside down? What's all this lumber doing in my backyard?
The bridge is actually held. Erosion took out the ends, both sides of it. So where the water was, we just used this was our bridge to get down to the center of town, where Danny's car was. We went and got Danny's car, were able to go up, get the truck, goodbye to Danny, and Ed and I went off to work for 27 hours straight.
I went home the next day. I stayed at my friend's house that night, not sleeping very well, and went home the next day, thank goodness again, to Dr. Hutt, who came and picked me up and took me home. I had to walk through the water on the road at Cedar Lake. He was the oral maxillofacial surgeon in Old Saybrook, and I had worked for him for a number of years, so we knew each other pretty well. And he came forward and allowed the phone to be used.
We had to go up here to the reservoir above this one, which is actually Deep Hollow Reservoir. That was the one they were very concerned about losing the dam. This is the reservoir up here, the Deep Hollow Res that I told you we monitored. That's my friend Ed with a raincoat underneath the dam there, if you can see that. We weren't too worried. The water levels were coming down at this time.
We're grateful to so many citizens that came forward and shared their scrapbooks with us. There's just an absolute sea of water that covers Main Street all the way to the upper shop or the main Pratt Reed factory. Then there's another one with a car lodged in a tree. Then there are several homes knocked off their foundations, and there's one that's completely on the side of the house itself.
This is Ivory Street, of a house just lifted right off its foundation and moved several feet.
Or in Centerbrook, right at Centerbrook Architects, where the water just didn't go over the dam but cut a new channel so close to the building.
They had all this lumber that they used to make the works for the inside of the piano, and that was in big stacks in their parking lot. I was told that there was about 1.5 million board feet of lumber.
And then the images of the amount of lumber, 1 million feet of lumber that were swept behind Pratt Reed and carried with the water, and when it jams up at some of these small the overpasses where the Falls River would have gone underneath, and it just can't, where the lumber blocked the passage of the water, and you see just the sea of lumber. Especially there's a great photo of taken from the helicopter, and it goes from the upper shop to the lower shop, and it's the damage.
The problems it caused there is that whenever it ran into a culvert, like on Ivory Street, there was a culvert with a little bridge, it jammed it up, and that caused the water to flow out and around. There were, I think, about 8 or 9 dams altogether until the Falls River hits the Connecticut River.
The water went by, this wall of water went past and hit this place that did not have a cul-de-sac, and it was the base of the steam train. And it came back, and that's when the damage was done, on the backlash. And of course, My son's area on the bottom floor was devastated, as was the entire basement.
Right at the foot of Goose Hill and at North Main, that's where this great brook goes through. That bridge was wiped out, took out the water main that fed Chester, Deep River, and Essex. They had a contractor installing water main, Matnick Brothers installing water main on 154 at the time. And you can see that bridge up there at the top, that's where the water main got knocked out. That's to the right is Goose Hill Road, to the left is North Main. And that's what damaged, I mean, that's how far down it went. It just went through the bridge, it just went through that whole area down there. So the only people that had water in Chester were probably people on Kings Highway and Goose Hill. They had to shut the valve off. They had to actually haul in gravel to have somewhere to put this water main. So within a day or two, water was restored to Chester and Deep River.
There are stories of people walking home and getting caught by this, getting people that were caught in trees or, climbing onto high fences or something that needed to be rescued. And so those first responders thinking, oh, we've got everybody out. No, here is something that we did not plan for, that we did not anticipate. And we have to go back out there and make sure in the pitch dark, because the power was out, there are no street lights, there are no cell phones with flashlights. They of course had their flashlights, but they were recruiting boats to get people, to save people off of the fences.
There are historical finds when the floodwaters went down that were discovered within the Falls River itself. So it's constantly shaping our understanding of the past, and that's why we mark the celebration, the 40th anniversary.
I had a big yard behind, and the river was behind it, and I had found the old Saybrook Oil Company's tank, which was missing. So I let Charlie Hall know that it was in my backyard. And I also found Peter Comstock's checkbook in a tree, along with quite a few of Stan Renahan's golf clubs. It was out of the Pratt Reed building.
Looking down underneath the tower down by Pratt Reed, but it must have been quite a sight to see when it happened, where the water was there.
The damage that was caused, it took at least a year for the village of Ivoryton and of Centerbrook to recover. Many places of work were harmed as well, so people had to recalibrate their lives.
If it comes up from the ground, it's one thing. If it came down from the sky, it was something else, and not responsibility of the insurance companies, even though you pay for it.
Over the next several months, these flood victims lived at the temporary site as they made arrangements for permanent housing.
In the days, the weeks right after this flood, there was a cloud that descended on Ivoryton. It was just really hard, and it was overwhelming. If that much water and mud sweeps into your house and covers everything with mud and destroys your furniture, and it's huge. How do you know how to start with that, especially when all of your neighbors are going through the same thing? As libraries all over are, all the time, a place for people to come to, a hub to get some information. Where do I get water? The water's out. Oh, you have to go to the firehouse. They're pumping it. Take your vessels and they'll fill up your water bottles. How long for this, how long for that, but sometimes just to tell their stories. The Essex Emergency Fund is there to help them, the residents of Essex. This fund was started right after the flood of 1982 because there were such a great number of people that were in need.
People have learned that you have to prepare as far as your infrastructure, and there's such a thing as overkill also, because you can't prevent everything. You just can't. You can't guess what's going to happen. But I'm sure the power utilities had poles taken out here and there too. In the summer, I think I'd rather have my water than power.
We're not necessarily celebrating the 40th anniversary, but we're marking this anniversary and learning from our past. And to learn more about the flood, there are so many great links on all three of our websites, whether it's videos or sharing of photographs, and you can contact us at any time to learn more about the flood of 1982.
So it's important to keep in mind that this was a very serious, significant, impactful event to the people who lived through it. We look at this now as this big event. Oh my goodness, all this happened. Can you imagine 8 feet of water sweeping through your village? Oh, the library was, the entire downstairs was filled. There was lumber all over the place. But it was really a horrible thing.
I don't think people get over this. I think they learn to live with it. It was a death of a community, if you know, basically.
When I was researching this, I actually wrote a chapter in a book about the flood, and I did a lot of research, and a lot of the stories were about neighbors helping neighbors. Because I talk about the water that's sweeping in and all this mud that's left behind, but we're talking about the houses that were right at the river level. So the people that lived on the hills were coming down, and they were shoving mud out of people's houses, and they were helping them get their furniture out, and they were helping them wash things down and helping them find their belongings that got washed down the river.
It was pretty evident that everyone pulled together. The National Guard may be working on something, but you still have, you know, neighbors in there helping out with whatever they need, shovels, moving stuff, whatever, contributing in some way. You know, if you were all set and you went to help your neighbor.
And so I think that's one thing to realize, that these events can bring out the very, very best of people.